Hello, welcome to InFocus Recouched, the show where we bring you the best of the Record InFocus archives. I'm Ken Kingston.
And I'm Dora Awamuya. We're going to meet two amazing women today. One has been a missionary to Nepal, and the other is dealing with the joys and challenges of raising a child with autism.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And we'll also hear from our dietitian Sue Rad on why your grandmother's recipes may well be worth a second look.
Yep, as long as food is involved, I'm so in. But first, let's take a look at the chat James Standish had with Cecily Patterson.
Cecily's just written a book called Love, Tears and Autism. Cecily, thanks so much for making time for us.
Thanks, it's a pleasure.
Now, just before we came on camera, you and I discovered that we have something in common. We're both missionary kids.
Yes.
And so you grew up in Pakistan.
Yeah, that's right.
So that must have been an incredible experience.
Oh, I thought it was very normal. I thought that's what everyone
And so there's
did.
like, what, 170 million people who are living there? Or whatever it is.
Yeah. No, it was good. I really loved it. It was great. It was really a fun place to grow up.
It'd be amazing and also, but very tumultuous.
Yes, it was, yes. And back when we first moved there and they deposed one of the prime ministers, we had riots starting outside our front gates. We were never allowed to go out the gate. Always had to stay in.
Makes Australia seem rather tame, doesn't it?
Yeah, pretty boring. But on the other hand, not too bad.
There's something to be said for that.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, Cecily, you've had an experience that you're sharing with the world. I think it's a very, very important experience. And that is, you have a son who is autistic. When did you discover that your son was autistic? First of all, what's his name?
His name is Cameron.
Cameron. Now, when did we find out that Cameron was autistic?
So from the age of 18 months, I already had an older daughter. And I could remember back to when she was the same age. And I thought, he's not doing the same sorts of things as she's doing at the same age. So he wasn't doing ma, moo, the cow goes moo, bar, the sheep goes bar, and all that kind of stuff that little kids do. And he was running away all the time. He didn't seem to understand anything I was saying. He was throwing tantrums, mega tantrums all the time. And then he wasn't speaking. And I thought, oh, I've got an eccentric child who's not speaking. The speech must be the issue. So I took him off to the doctor and we played Ring Around a Rosie for a long time before anyone could say, yes, your child has autism. In fact, the person who really told me was a preschool teacher who'd never met him. I was on the phone saying, I'd like to enrol my child in your preschool, but I think he might need a little bit of extra help. She goes, oh, what does he do? And I explained. And she goes, I don't want to upset you, but I think he might have autistic spectrum disorder. And I went, oh.
So that must have been just like an incredibly powerful moment when this came. When
Yes, it was very terrible. It was very terrible, and I felt quite shocked and quite sick to my stomach. It wasn't nice.
And then from that point on, from somebody telling you your child might be autistic, through to getting treatment, what was the process like?
Look, I can't say it was easy. First of all, we waited to go and see this paediatrician who diagnosed. He gave the diagnosis. I thought, excellent, right, now we've got a diagnosis, what do we do?
Right.
And he told us about 3 things. And I'd already been to see the speech therapist who was no good. The other thing he told us was to contact an organisation who went on the phone, were not very helpful. And the other thing he said was get lots of support from your family. I thought, well, I can do that, but nothing else.
Didn't need to come to see you to find that out.
Yeah, that's right. There was nothing else that he could offer me. And
well, maybe I should ask, how did your husband react to the diagnosis?
Well, he was upset as well.
Yeah.
I mean, we were all upset.
I mean, this is like a very, very deep thing to have somebody say there's something profoundly
not only profoundly wrong, but it will be wrong for as long as he's alive.
Right.
It's not just, and we can fix it, in 5 years, or he'll be fine because we'll manage it this way. No one said anything like that. There's nothing they could say.
Right. Now, you're the daughter of a pastor. Now, your husband is a lawyer, but then he felt the cold of the ministry.
Yes.
So he's a pastor, and you two are both in ministry together at a church. How did the church community, the Christian community, how did they react?
They were really good, I have to say. The church that we went to pretty much straight after his diagnosis, they were very supportive. The first week we turned up and I escorted him screaming down the aisle during communion out of church. I think most people were like, oh, poor thing, rather than, oh my goodness, what's she doing? So they were very supportive and I'm very thankful for that.
But did you get that kind of support in the general community?
No. So I've been in supermarkets where someone has made comments after he's had a massive tantrum that, well, I wouldn't bring up my children like that. They would be under the end of a strap. And I thought, you know what? That's just so not helpful.
That's when you want to say everything that you're thinking. You want to just say it, but you don't.
Actually, no, I did. I made a bit of a rude comment, and then I walked out with my face blushing. So it wasn't very good.
Well, sometimes it's not the worst thing. But you're a Christian, and you have a child with a profound problem.
Yeah.
You must have prayed.
Of course, we pray all the time.
And how did you? But you must have prayed for healing.
Yes.
And God hasn't healed your child.
He hasn't healed him the way I wanted him to be healed. He hasn't healed him all at once on one day. Wow, big miracle. Let's write that book.
Right.
That hasn't taken place.
That's the $1 million seller, right?
That's the one. I think what we've seen is slow and steady progress.
Right.
He's taken more steps than I think I ever expected him to take.
Right.
I feel better than I ever expected to feel, which is a good thing. But I think that the main thing that I've learned from all of this is really that I think I needed to be healed of a lot of not loving. When I say that, of course I loved my children. Everyone loves their children. But I think I didn't really understand that loving when you don't get back, loving when it's really hard, when the other person doesn't say I love you, that's when you understand how much God loved us.
Right.
And so, I can love my daughter. She's very easy to love. She's gorgeous and beautiful and wins awards and everything. I think, oh, yay, I'm the best mother in the world. And she makes me feel good.
Sure, and everyone comes up and says, wow, what's your parenting trick?
Exactly.
What did you do?
You must be so proud of her. Of course I am. And, this one who throws tantrums in the supermarket and says funny things and is socially odd and, he's a difficult child. To love him takes more than I've ever had to give. So it's really learning about
it really
real
is
love.
Unconditional
Yeah,
love,
it really is. You really have to do that.
I think that you're very brave to admit that, because I think people have a hard time to actually say publicly, well, this is a struggle.
I've had to admit a lot of things that are very hard.
Now, sometimes when people have profound problems, we have a tendency to sort of fill them with silver linings, like, well, isn't that great? You've learned something or another. How do you feel when people sort of patronize you?
I feel annoyed. I think I understand what they're doing because I've done it before.
Sure.
You don't really want to deal with their problem, so you want to make them feel better and try and make the problem go away.
Right.
So, but his, autistic children can be so bright. That's so wonderful. I think, you don't have to live with all the rest of the stuff that goes on. So I think, let people say, I feel sad. Let people say, this is a real problem. This is a chronic problem. I'm having a lot of trouble dealing with this. And then you go, let me hug you. And that's all you need to do. You don't need to say, it's all right.
That's empathy,
yeah.
isn't it? To just acknowledge.
Yeah,
acknowledge
people's pain.
There's going to be a lot of people in our audience who either have autistic children or know somebody who does, and I think that they're going to want to get this book, Love, Tears and Autism. You can see it there on your screen. It's available at Christian bookstores, or you can Google Cecily Patterson. And I think what's important about a book like this, Cecily, is not just that it tells the story, but it helps the rest of us know exactly how to relate and understand, walk in the shoes of a parent who is having a struggle like this. So
I have to say, all the way through, I've put little bits like, what is autism? What can you do? One of them is, what does an autistic child need? And I've got a whole list of little things and how you can help your friend. And I've also got a Facebook community going around the book, and we post things that are of help to people as well.
So Cecily Patterson on Facebook, that would also be excellent.
Oh, it's Love, Tears and Autism on Facebook.
Love, Tears and Autism on Facebook.
Parenting and writing a book, how does that work?
Yeah, I know. It's amazing, isn't it? I think she's really grounded, though, an incredible person. And I think I remember James actually mentioning her a couple of times as someone he particularly admired out of, everyone that he interviewed during the InFocus program.
Yeah, it makes sense. Well, it's time for an ad break now, but we'll be back in just a minute.
We're going to start with some soybeans. Use some chickpeas, an onion, you have a teaspoon of salt, slice some tomatoes, slice some cucumber, some red onion just to give it a bit of freshness. So just make little falafels like this. They just smell amazing. Let's make our tahini dressing. Let's get in some tomatoes, cucumbers, some falafels. Drizzle some of this lovely dressing. All you need to do is roll it up and you've got a delicious lunch for your family.
Now, Dora, tell me about your grandmother's cooking. Do you like it?
Well, actually, back in Samoa, the men do all the cooking.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so when my grandfather used to do like the Samoan umus with the hot rocks and banana leaves on top and steamed for hours, so good.
Wow, okay. Well, I mean, I know that when I cook, it's also, you know, quite different to how my grandparents did it, or even my parents really to a certain extent. And these days, it seems to be, you know, cooking's always about being quick and easy.
Yeah.
But is that always a good thing?
No, I really shouldn't. I should boil the potato and get healthy. Did you know that the way you cook your food, we're talking about the cooking method, if you get it right, you could add years to your life, and this is why we have Sue Rad, our nutritionist. Sue,
Hi,
it's just
James.
incredible thinking about it. I mean,
Absolutely.
chip and potato, that's pretty simple.
It's not just what you eat, but how you cook it that could determine our health outcomes.
Yes, tell us just a little bit of a brief summary.
Well,
of the
scientists have been looking at a range of chemicals that can be formed in your food whilst you cook.
Yeah.
Nasty chemicals. For example, let me give you a few. Heterocyclic amines, HCAs, polyaromatic hydrocarbons, otherwise known as PARs, which can be found in meat, chicken and fish when cooked at high dry heat. Then we've got substances called AGEs, advanced glycation end products. They can be found in a cross-section of foods, which we'll look at in a minute. And even a chemical called acrylamide can be formed in food under the right conditions and in certain foods. And these chemicals are all linked with things like cancer, multiple cancers, from stomach cancer, bowel cancer, prostate cancer, pancreatic cancer, to inflammation in the body, to bringing on the complications of diabetes early, to Alzheimer's, and to basically premature death, cutting your life short. So we're curious to know where they are, because in animal studies they are strongly associated with problems, and if you know where they are, you can look at alternatives to reduce their consumption.
We really need to understand this, because if you miss the cancer that would have otherwise killed you, you could add a whole decade to your life, and who knows how long extra.
That's right. So it's important how you cook your food, not just
so
what
show
you
us
eat.
the hows.
So, for example, the safest cooking methods would be the old-fashioned way, boiling or steaming or poaching.
Yes, put it in the pot with some
rather
water.
than pan frying or barbecuing, you know, or grilling. Even grilling, your piece of steak might be lean, but if you're grilling and browning it, the more browned the meat or the chicken is, the more of these cancer-causing chemicals
So if I boil this potato, essentially, I don't go above 100 degrees.
If you boil the potato, you'll be like the Swedish are. They always have boiled potato on the table. So boiling is safe, but if you roast or deep fry your potato like chips,
or something.
That's right, and it's very crispy and crunchy, you will have a lot more of AGEs formed and acrylamide, not to mention potato crisps. They are loaded in this chemical called acrylamide, which the International Agency for Research on Cancer has now dubbed as probably cancer-causing.
So that's why you've wrapped the fish in foil.
Well, that's right. If you're going to use fish or chicken or any of those animal products on the barbecue, what the research shows is if you marinate it, that reduces the formation somewhat, not completely, of these chemicals.
Add some moisture to it.
And you add something like lemon juice. Or vinegar, or you wrap it, whether it's banana leaves or foil or whatever, you will minimise the contact with not just sort of like the grill, but you will reduce the amount of carcinogens that come from the smoke from the little embers that are...
Now, I'm smiling because I stole one of the cashews before. That's why the display's a bit wrecked. But there's roast cashews.
Well, who would have thought? All nuts are healthy, of course, but did you know, James, that if you have roasted cashews, you are getting more AGEs?
Because they've been roasted at a high temperature.
Because they've been roasted at high temperature. But if you eat natural nuts, you avoid them. Chips, same thing. Most processed, ready-to-eat snack foods are loaded in acrylamide because of the dry, high heat.
Let me get these two. And they're both warm too.
Yeah, even fluids.
One's coffee and one's tea.
There can be a difference. So,
I do like my hot drinks. Now tell me, Sue, which one should I be drinking?
If you're wanting to avoid acrylamide, minimise your consumption, definitely the tea. Definitely.
Because the coffee beans have been roasted in hot temperatures. Okay.
So we need lower heat, lower temperature, and we need moisture, more moist cooking methods or food production methods, and a slower, longer sort of cooking time. That usually...
Now, when I go to the supermarket, I just like getting those pre-prepared breakfast cereals. Until this morning, I never even thought about it. You know, you just whack them off the shelf onto your plate.
Well, it was a while ago that the Swedish Food Authority first sounded the alarm about acrylamide, but if you want to avoid the acrylamide that can hide in those box cereals, just cook your own whole grains.
In the old-fashioned way.
Or soften rolled grains.
Add
Make
some
your
moisture,
own
put
porridge.
them in the pot.
That's it. And you can reduce your intake.
And don't burn your toast, and if you burn it, throw it away.
If you burn your toast, not a good idea, because the darker it is, the more acrylamide that's there. And not to mention things like processed meats. They have a whole range of other chemicals that are very, very nasty and are strongly linked with cancer, with heart disease, and even type 2 diabetes.
So, Sue, if you were to boil this down into the simple summary for us, what is the simple thing we need to think about in our cooking methods?
Well, one thing we should not forget is to eat more fresh, eat more raw, because simply by doing that,
salad.
we're minimising the amount of cooked food and minimising the amount of chemicals we could be ingesting. But if we are cooking, and when we are cooking, use boiling, steaming, stewing, all of those older cooking methods where there's plenty of moisture, where the temperature's lower, not char grilling, not blackening things, not making them ultra crispy because, would you believe it, these chemicals are contained in much higher levels.
Look, that's amazing. And folks, you really need to go to www.suerad.com, find out more, or if you would like to follow her on Twitter @CulinaryMed. Just go and find out how you can improve your life. Just add decades to your life. It's just incredible.
You know, Dora, the thing that shocks me most about that segment is my beloved breakfast cereal. Wow. I mean, basically anything cooked at high temperature, you know, that comes out crunchy is in the frame there, well, according to Sue. Well, not just Sue, the research.
Yeah, and look, I don't know if I'm going to suddenly cut out all the fried and crispy and baked things from my diet, but I guess it does make sense to lean more towards the steamed and boiled kind of things.
Yeah, when you can.
Yeah.
Look, steamed peas and carrots, yum, I do love that. Hey, don't go away. We'll take a short break now, but we'll be back in a minute.
Father, I can't connect the dots through the little that I understand. What words can I say to reach you? How can I know that you are there, listening, hearing, caring? My words are broken, weak, and powerless. But I know your power is limitless. What can I say?
Signs of the Times, a Christian view of the world. And this month in Signs, 50 years after John Lennon's infamous quote, "Is Christianity waning?" Imagine a world where we don't waste time eating food. The real story behind the legend of St. Patrick. The portent of the 4 blood moons of recent years. All in this month's Signs of the Times. Subscribe to Signs today and change your life.
Onions add great sweetness and flavour and a good base to any curry. Going to add some ginger, some garlic. Look at that, nice and chunky. So we've got our spices, gives it kind of a Sri Lankan feel. Add some tomatoes, tomato paste, some honey. Roasted vegetables in these kind of dishes are always great. But we add some creaminess to it. And that dish is now finished, ready to hit the table. I recommend you to give it a try, and it's so easy.
Hi, welcome back. Now, this next interview we're going to see, Ken, is one that you did with Naomi Reid.
Oh, yeah, great. She's a lovely person and so enthusiastic. You're really going to love this. Well, today we have Naomi Reid in the studio. She's a physio, which is good because my back's been giving me
so is mine.
a few issues. No, but seriously, you do have a physio background, but you've ended up being a bit of an author and a storyteller. Interesting journey, how that happened?
Yeah, it was never the plan. I mean, you never plan anything, really, do you? But it actually happened because I was desperate. Yeah. And so part of my story is that my husband and I, we spent 6 years in Nepal working with the Christian medical mission, INF.
In Kathmandu or elsewhere?
Pokhara, yeah. And so 6 years, and we were working in a leprosy hospital and a general hospital, and then training local physios. But then we came back, we went back with our 3 sons. And so this the point that I became quite desperate. I mean, a lot, like, I don't want to sound negative, it was actually such a privilege to be there. We made the best friends and we just learnt so much. But
you've written some books about those experiences
too,
haven't you?
And that's the point, yeah. That's why I became desperate at the beginning of our 7th monsoon. And when it's your first, you think, oh, wow, you know, there's this novelty.
This is very exotic.
Yeah, 120 days of rain. But by the time it was our 7th, you know, I knew what was coming. And by then we were living in Dulikal. So Darren was out every day training Nepali physios at the Institute. And that was all very good. But I was at home homeschooling our 3 sons, who were then 4, 6 and 10. So if you've got sons, you've got sons. You can imagine, you know, 3 of them inside in 120 days of rain. And, you know, we're on a ridge in the Himalayas. We didn't have shops or soccer clubs.
Not a whole lot of extracurricular activities.
Pools. No, none at all. We walked to the top of our hill, and then sometimes we'd walk back down again. You know, that's what we did. So then, anyway, the monsoon was coming, but as well as that, those particular years, it was the civil war in Nepal. So we had an army camp just at the bottom of our hill, and we heard bombs and gunfire every week. So
this is Maoist guerrillas versus
that's right,
the government?
The insurgency, the government, and then the king. And it just got worse. 10,000 people had died. It was just at this point where everyone thought it was hopeless politically, you know. And so I was going into the monsoon thinking, rain, war, homeschool, grief, I can't do this. You know, it's too hard.
All too
and
much.
knowing what it was going to be like. So I think just in that desperation, that was the point. I'd never written anything before as physio, science-based. I just got out the laptop, and every second night, about midnight, I would just type, and I just had to think and pray and somehow express myself somehow.
So this is autobiography as therapy, isn't it?
Kind of,
really?
well, yeah, sort of, except that, I mean, people say that, but it was a little bit obviously more crafted and deliberate than that. But it was such a helpful process for me to look back on other seasons of life and to consider, even Ecclesiastes 3, you know, what does that mean? That there's a time for everything and a season for every activity under heaven. What about war and pain and suffering? And it was just very difficult, but at the same time really helpful for me to look back, to see somehow amidst all of that God is still sovereign.
So out of that mission experience came how many books?
Well, yes, quite a few. The first one was my 7th monsoon. So by the end of 120 days, I'd written suddenly 65,000 words. There they were. That was published, and then that led on to the other books.
And it did quite well, and yet there was a series of books, and even one for when you returned, that sort of cultural, reverse culture shock when you got back.
Even harder.
But you've even moved from storytelling on the page to actually doing more like stage productions and stuff as well.
We never know what's coming next, do we? We really never know. So then, the book was published, and I started to see the power of stories. So people would just stop me at speaking engagements or in the shops, or they'd email me and say, thank you for sharing your story.
Well, what was it about your stories you think that
just sharing pain. Like I also shared about a period prior to Nepal where we'd lived through 5 miscarriages and struggled with pain and other types of grief, and but being honest with that, but not just blurting it out, because anyone can do that, but blurting it out in such a way that you find that hope in the middle of it, that you find that hope in God and what He's done for us through Jesus that allows us to keep walking. And so when people connect with those stories, they think, okay, good, because they haven't lived through that.
It gives them hope.
That's right. But something similar. And they think, well, I can put my hope in that same God that Naomi does, and we can walk along together, which is what is a human shared journey, isn't it? And when we hear each other's stories, you go,
And so when, because you're now doing sort of one-woman monologues and stage productions for kids and all this sort of stuff, are some of those same themes coming out through that hope through, despair and things like that?
Absolutely. So I started, it was Christmas, and I started thinking about how can we not isolate the nativity story? How can we tell it in context and in a fresh way? So I told a Bible story through what I imagined through the voice of Mary, the mother, but not the young, in the one in blue by the manger. But say you imagined a 70-year-old Mary. What would she say looking back? If someone asked her story, how would she tell the whole thing? Because she wouldn't just go, donkey, baby, shepherds, would she? She'd go, the whole context of his life.
The scripture tells us Mary treasured these things in her heart. So I imagine as an older lady, she would have...
Still be treasuring and tell the whole story. What did it mean? And his life and the way he was and his death and resurrection and how that impacted the entire Roman world. She would have... So I began with her and I wrote it and I put it on at our church Christmas Eve. And afterwards, there's this old man who's just crying. saying, I've never cried before in church.
Wow.
And it just showed me, if you take the story and just go from left of the action a bit, tell it the same, but tell it with skin on, tell it with, so they can smell those sheep and hear the sounds of the Roman soldiers and feel the swaddling cloths and the grave clothes together. You know, then it impacts us. So that's what I did. And it led on to all sorts of things. For example, friends of ours at church who collect biblical coins. And so they have an actual denarius that, you know, the one 12, you know, struck in 12 AD. Not the one, but maybe it was the one.
Is this an actual denarius, or is this a reproduction?
No, it's a real thing. It was struck in 12 AD, and it might have been the one.
This coin in my hand was struck in 12 AD.
That Jesus held up and said, whose head is on the coin in...
Whose head is on this coin? Well, there you go.
But and here is a silver shekel, an actual one, 2,000 years old, like the ones that Judas was paid for the betrayal of Jesus. But here we go. This is what struck me the most. 2 tiny little copper mites, like the widow's mites. And you're there, and you just touch them, and they're so tiny you can't really see them. Who bought oil with them, and who hid them, you know, in their little pouch. But you just imagine that old woman amidst all the other, you know, the rich people throwing in the shekels and making big noise. There she was. You know, she just was in the crowd. No one would have noticed her. She pulled it out. She dropped it in. Wouldn't even noticed. Jesus noticed. And he said, do you see that woman? She gave more than all the others. They gave out of their plenty. She gave everything she had to live on. And I think for me, telling the story like that, and so I expanded that into another monologue, you know, it just helps people to go, oh yeah, we're connected. Like we're connected to each other's stories. We're connected to their stories. And God is doing this great big work. And he's going to bring it to completion one day. And he will help us, and he will work in us until that day.
Well, you're clearly inspired, Naomi, and probably a bit inspirational too. I'd love to go through all your books one by one and everything that you're doing right now, including a kids' stage show about Noah's Ark.
Called The Zookeeper, actually.
Called The Zookeeper. But if you jump on Naomi Reid's website, which is naomireid.info, naomireid.info, the address is right there on your screen. You can find out all about it. Thanks so much, Naomi, for coming in.
Lovely. Thank you.
Isn't it amazing the twists and turns life can take you on?
Yeah.
Like a physio, Nepal, books, performances. Awesome.
Yeah. And I get the feeling, you know, Dora, that just as we watched that interview again, that a part of Naomi's success is that she just throws herself completely into whatever she's doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no holding back.
Yeah.
And it's pretty clear that her faith and hope in God is something that's kept her strong throughout everything.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Hey, we're out of time for now, but thanks for your company on InFocus Recouched this week. God bless. We'll see you next time.